Hello, thank you for joining us to Cambridge InsideOut, the sequel. We're on CCTV during their 25th anniversary. My name is Susanna Sagat, and my co-host's name is...
I'm Robert Winters.
And you might notice that someone's come between us. We have a very special guest today. We want to introduce you to Anthony Galluccio, who is a very famous Cantabrigian who's run for many offices. He's been on the city council. He's been on the school committee as mayor of the city. He's been a state rep, and we want you to. We've talked a little bit in our previous segment about running for office, running for city council in particular. And this segment, we want to talk a little bit more about being in office and a little bit more about the school committee, if we could. Is that all right with you, Anthony?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I think the first thing we need to emphasize here is that if you want to talk about being a city councilor or on the school committee, you have to first get elected. And part of getting elected has to do with achieving the necessary number of votes. And again, we'll talk about this in later programs a little more detail, but approximately to earn a city council seat, you have to win about 10% of the votes, which does affect how you actually engineer a campaign. And for the school committee, it's approximately 1/7.
That's what they mean by quota, right?
And that's what we call the election quota. And we talked about that in our first program, and we will certainly come back to that as we get closer to election day. But Anthony actually is one of the, I think there were 3 candidates who got not just a quota, but close to a double quota.
What does that mean?
Well,
Anthony, explain it to us.
Well, Robert's the mathematician. We just tried to go get as many #1 votes as we could. I think the way I would have referred to it was we had far more #1 votes than we needed to, so we had the advantage of being able to feed other candidates and actually end up electing other candidates just on transfer on particular elections.
That's right.
I did want to say I lost. I was not a state rep. I was fortunate enough to get elected state senator, but I think I've probably won as many elections and lost as many elections as anyone in Cambridge politics.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good because
slip of the tongue.
No,
I
what's
apologize.
important about that is, I look back and I think I learned as much the elections I lost as I won, and it's, sometimes the learning experience was just incredible, and the distinctions were blurred. They're all good experiences, but I had a lot of fun in losing campaigns.
Yeah, candidacy in and of itself it's an interesting thing to do. I've done it.
Alice Wolf put a beating on me two campaigns, and I learned a lot, and we had a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Well, can we talk a little bit about, okay, so election day's come and gone, you've hit your quota, you're now elected, you're now a city councilor. The thing that drives people nuts in this city is that all of a sudden you have the city councilors together and they take forever stalling on regular city business, trying to figure out the mayoral election.
Starting on inauguration day.
And we out here in the neighborhoods have no idea of why it takes so long, what's going on. Now we have you here, who you've gone through it, not only electing mayors, but also getting elected mayors.
Yeah.
Tell us the juicy story. What is going on?
No, you're right. And actually, I was silly enough to think, like most elected city councilors do, that I could be mayor as soon as I got on the city council, until Sheila Russell said, "Hey, you're wet behind the ears. All right, stop it. You're not going to be mayor." And she gave me some vegetable lasagna and told me to shut up. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Sounds like Sheila.
All I would say is this: I ran for a lot of offices, and I ran as give the new kid a chance, creativity and reform, to vote for the experienced leader. I've done it all.
Strong leadership.
That's right.
I remember that.
Proven leadership.
Proven leadership.
Which I think was my dad's campaign theme. But that mayoral election, if you really want to be mayor, which to me, Cambridge mayor is I mean, for me, it was the pinnacle of all things, because you get to impact schools and kids.
Because you're on the school committee also, right?
You chair the school committee. And if you grew up in Cambridge, or you lived in Cambridge for a long time, and you came from sort of my generation, it was like, Walter Sullivan and Al Vellucci and you just regardless of the actual authority you have, being mayor, if you love Cambridge the way we do, being mayor of Cambridge is a huge thing. So those elections were the most difficult, challenging political experiences that I've ever had, because you go from this election where you create this energy and this sort of thematic campaigning, right? Where you go out to the whole Cambridge community and say, here's why I should be a city councilor, here's why I can bring people together, and here are the things I think I can impact. And then you go really to a system which is very sort of behind closed doors, and you have to convince 8 other people, all whom will want the same job, that
Well.
you would somehow be a better candidate. You know, I used to say it's like putting a nice red juicy steak in the middle of 9 hungry wolves and telling that other hungry wolf why you should eat first. It's a tough process.
What actually happens?
So what happens is every mayoral candidate makes the first mistake of trying to convince another mayoral candidate that they would be a better mayor. And after they all screw up and make that big mistake, they all realize, I now have to go repent and say, no, you'd be a good mayor too, but can you give me a chance? And so it's ego, which is then, as life often is, a journey of ego and humility, and no one knows it better than me. And then once they all figure it out, the question is, are the scars and wounds too deep?
Yeah.
And sort of who has
Are there
played it?
grudges?
And right, and you know, I learned over time, sometimes it's better to, and this was never easy for me, but sometimes it's easier to sit back than to jump right in, and that's why it takes so long. Because there's always a few candidates who have figured out the harder you play it, the less likely you are. And so it really becomes a whole election process that can't be sped up, no matter how hard they try.
Yeah, a related matter too is that sometimes I've noticed that sometimes the strongest candidate in the general election, they will then be seen as, well, a little too. Why should I strengthen your hand even more?
Oh well,
that's inside politics.
I think that's. When I was mayor, I learned really early I would get nothing done on the city council if I took credit. I mean, we remember citing the main library. It was like that was. I really, Ken was out in front, and I left him there, and I knew inherently that on any major issue, if I went too far out as mayor, it wouldn't get done. So you really had to let city council, if it was an East Cambridge issue, you sort of let Tim run. And so I think that piece of it is different when you get to the school committee, because, and this is why I think mayor is such a great opportunity. The school committee, having not run against you, right, is sitting there, and everybody wants leadership, but it is hard to defer a lot of authority to somebody who you've just campaigned against. So I found the school committee, there were some aches and pains, because back then there were the affiliations and slates, so it wasn't a quick start. Sure. But once the school committee realized, hey, I'm not going to run against this person in 2 years, there was a real opportunity to lead, and I savored that, and I think that's really inside stuff. But that's why I think
it's more complex than that, though. I think because here the school committee candidates have run against each other. They know the issues better than anybody else in the world. And all of a sudden, the city councilor who hasn't even talked about school issues, might not know very much about school issues, who got elected mayor for who knows what reason, all of a sudden is the head of the school committee.
That's right.
So there's a lot of politicking just to make yourself, they want leadership, but it's also, who are you?
That's right.
And you're just one vote, and you have to do it right.
It's a lot of work. You're absolutely right, because so that's why there is some benefit to doing well in the election. My theory was, at first I was an aggravation to everyone because I was new and you're taking everyone's votes. At some point when you turn that corner, it's great, because my theory was, if you could show popular support, Susanna may not agree with me, but if you have a big base of support, there's they will give you a little more room to lead, because they say, well, I may not agree with him all the time, but all these people vote for him, so let me
voice
give him a
matters.
chance.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Now, the other school committee, city council issue is the budget. And I know that comes up it's like the cyclical thing, every now and then it's gonna come up. The school committee works very hard all year long, deliberates on a budget, comes up with it, presents it to the city council, as they should, as part of the budget process for the city. And the city council decides they're going to, as the school committee sees it, micromanage.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the dynamics there.
You know, that's a key role, I think, for the mayor. Certainly all mayors. Mayor Davis recently has tried to hold that line. The conduit to the school committee is the chairman of the school committee, the elected mayor.
Right.
And so, you know, mayors have to not constantly remind people, because that can be challenging, but the city council has to remember that is the natural mechanical link to the school committee. One of the reasons I was always a supporter, not of changing Plan E, but to have a popular election of mayor.
What's Plan E?
Plan E is how we currently elect the city council and mayor, where the city council elects the mayor,
Okay.
but we have a strong city manager that makes really the major decisions for the city. I mean, I think of the city manager as really what is a strong mayor in other cities.
Got it.
That's right.
And so the reason I was in favor of an elected mayor was because I thought it was important for the people,
Elected by the population.
by the
Popular
popular vote,
Yeah.
so that the people could define that job. And I think, you know, notwithstanding that piece of it, I don't think people have a clear sense of whether a city councilor should be 60% school issues, 40% public safety,
Sure.
planning.
Yeah.
And so I always thought that exercise would make people think about, oh, okay, when I elect the mayor, I'm electing the chair of the school committee, because the school committee is the body that determines, you know, school-based issues and policies, and the city council determines these others. And you know, people are busy, a lot of different levels of government, and I don't think we've ever really had that pause where
I think when there was an ad hoc committee on the different ways of electing the mayor, I think we were probably to some degree on opposite sides of that issue. But I could have warmed up to that very much, as long as the election of a mayor, if it had been done popularly, could have been done with the same type of balloting, with a ranked choice balloting that we use in the regular elections. But that wasn't really on the table, because I figure, you know, if you do it by a plurality election, sort of the person with the most votes wins, that would have kind of conflicted with the way we do it in the city council and school committee elections.
It's almost like, to me, we've never created a real job description for mayor. I mean, at one time I thought we should change the name of it to city mediator, because if you look back at the real hot issues.
Yeah.
I mean, we had issues at the Agassiz School.
Or if there's a crisis.
Rent control, any kind of class issue or race issue, you say, where's the mayor?
That's
Where's the
right.
mayor?
I always thought for kids especially,
Pretty good.
if I had kids, which I got to get moving on, I'd want to say this is what the mayor does. The mayor tries to unify and mediate when there's conflict.
Yes.
Notwithstanding changing the name of the position, I thought if people elected a mayor, they would quickly figure out that 70% of the mayor's time is going to be spent down at the
Right.
school committee.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, in a way, it's sort of like the city manager is sort of the administrative chief executive, and the mayor is sort of the moral chief executive in an ideal world, where, you know, when there's a crisis and you sort of need somebody to just sort of take charge, you don't necessarily defer to the manager as an administrative person, but you need somebody who would speak for everybody.
Correctly,
Right.
correct.
Well, another fine line a mayor has to walk is they also usually want to get reelected. And if they let go of all the city council issues and focus just on the schools, then their reelection is
Absolutely.
chancier.
Got to hold on to
You
those
gotta hold
council
on to
issues and the
those
PR
issues.
elements. Although I found that generally people had a sense of sort of whether you were, as mayor, stepping out into traffic. And if you don't get into those tough issues, it may not be discussed, but they give the mayor credit for stepping into the hot stuff. I think people expect it. But that's
the kind of moral leadership that I think every place needs to some degree, and mayor should be willing to step in and perform that role.
Okay, so you're elected, you have that interminable time of finding the new mayor. You have a mayor, so now you're a city councillor. What's the day-to-day life like?
Well, I mean, I think that's the piece where if you were, you were running for Cambridge City Council, you should read the Plan E Charter right away, and you should figure out, you've obviously already figured out what quota is and how to get elected. And if you don't know those two things, you're not gonna get elected, and you're not gonna get anything done.
It's a non-issue.
But, the city manager is the head of the city, so, I mean, I guess I would say two things. One, you will not get anything done by yourself, and by convincing others that you're the smartest person in the room, you will get nothing done. And that was true with the State House too. I mean, you just, having the best idea doesn't get that idea executed. So
Well, most of life.
absolutely. So announcing an idea on Monday night so that people say that's a great idea without getting other city councilors vested and involved and behind it is a sure way to sink an issue. And so you have to get some city councilors behind you. And then, my approach always was, don't go into the city manager and ask, it's he, but at some point we will certainly have a female city manager. Don't try to convince the city manager to do something that if you were city manager, you wouldn't see the reason in and you couldn't defend. So, you go in with a real plan that makes sense as part of a 5 or a 10-year plan for the city.
All right.
And that's, some city councilors are a quick study. I mean, I can remember some mornings, Bob Healy was a 5 a.m. person.
Right.
And,
It was amazing.
that's when you had to go in and catch him. And if you ran into another city councilor at that time of the morning, that, you had some real competition for the city managers, yeah.
So that's the secret, was just getting there earlier.
Yeah, lucky for him, I wasn't a morning person, so. Would have cost the city a lot more money if I was, I'm
So
sure.
the big question now is, when does Rich Rossi show up for work in the morning? Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, that's for the next council to figure out.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? That's why it will be an interesting council year for certainly the incumbents, because fresh off a new vote for city manager, I think those, all of whom are returning, who supported the new city manager, feel there's a lot of camaraderie there.
Yeah.
Because they went through that selection, and I think there is a great opportunity this term. If Frank Duhey was great at saying, when I first came on the city council, he and I both decided, let's leave rent control in the past and let's get some stuff done. But Frank was really a seasoned veteran, and I think he had taken some votes that maybe he would do differently, and I watched him really use committee processes and goal settings to, make affordable housing a priority, right? Make youth programming a priority. And we would do a lot of goal setting where we realized Frank was not going to steal my votes. I wasn't going to steal Frank's. We were where we were. The Sullivans had, and we all realized let's set some goals for the 2 years. And I think with City Manager Rossi and this group of incumbents, they really have an opportunity to do some good stuff next term if they set their minds to it.
Right. So actually, the period you're talking about with Frank Dewey is also, if I'm not mistaken, when there was the establishment of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Correct.
Getting that established so that as rent control passed into history, there was an alternative, which is really a major part of the way policy proceeds today.
Inclusionary zoning, first time home. I
zoning,
mean, we were written up in the Globe as probably the best local affordable housing program in the
Right.
country.
And that wasn't going to happen if you had, 3 or 4 councilors lined up on the side of one fence and 3 or
That's
4 on
right.
the other. That ultimately was, if it wasn't a unanimous vote, it was pretty close to it.
Well, now that I have you here, there's one issue that drives me nuts. So maybe I can get some background on that. I think that we have tremendous amounts of sign pollution in the
Oh.
city, and that we have in every corner, every time I look, there's a new sign that pops up that dedicates that piece of brick to someone.
Yeah.
What is that about?
That, the world of yard signs.
Not
And-
yard signs. The street signs, the corner signs. The,
Okay. I thought we were
square
talking about
signs.
political. Well, so what I would say about that is, and I give credit to the city councilor, certainly the current city council, David Marr.
David Marr.
They created a process about 2.5 years ago where they moratoriumed all new street corner signs,
right.
and they actually created a process in which certain priorities and criterion were established, being a veteran is one where they really slowed that down and created
How did that
criteria.
start, though? What happened there?
You know, I think it was all good intentioned, right? To try to create a visual history of the city, and it got a little out of control, right? Where it became hard for elected officials because people would come up to you and say, you know, can you do a dedication?
Of course.
And a lot of them were really great and are really important. And actually, some of them I think are understated.
Yeah.
Where it says a name, but it doesn't give you a sense of why or what. And then it, like I said, it got probably a little out of control. And I think the council has reeled it back in now.
Yeah, it
That's
was actually
interesting.
reaching a point I was expecting to see a street corner with, you know, 4 corners that would be 4 signs.
Well, and remember, I mean,
It'll
it
get to that point.
It could have.
it started out with, most importantly and appropriately for people who were killed in the line of
Oh,
duty.
those are beautiful, the ones that are up
Yeah.
there. like
And so,
that.
yeah, so, you know, those sort of got probably, you know, washed under all these other signs. And so I think Sandy Albano and the city and Public Works has done a good job of trying to make those more prevalent. So, you know, it's not easy. I think in general it's good, but it became confusing for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, a little overdone. So, so now my understanding is your father was on the school committee, elected in the year of my birth, 1955,
Okay.
and served for 4 terms, right? You served for 6, so you're one of the there are fewer now, but one of the families that have actually had multiple generations,
Yeah.
along with the Cranes and the Sullivans, and I'm sure there have been a few others.
I wouldn't put myself in that category, although, you know, partly because there was a big gap, because my dad, you know, was on the school committee in the late 50s and really late 50s, mid 50s and late 50s, and then, you know, he was a labor attorney and got married and did all that. And so there was probably 30 years between when he left office and when I first ran. He was more well known for his work with Jack Kennedy. He was Jack
Right.
Kennedy's campaign secretary, which was way before, and ran his congressional campaign. So,
Yeah.
but you know what? Here's what I found out about politics. When I first campaigned, more people knew my uncle, Charlie, who was his theme was photographer of brides, because he was a photographer. And he worked at the Green Street Welfare Office,
Right.
where he
Knew a lot
helped
of
people
people.
who came in who needed to get on
Yeah.
assistance.
Yeah.
And so I quickly realized what my dad preached to Jack Kennedy, which was look for people in the neighborhoods who aren't political people, but who are well respected and liked, and get them on your side.
Yeah.
Because the voice of somebody who says, you know, I've never helped anyone in elected office
right.
before, but I like this person. And it was, I mean, it's true story. When I knocked doors up on Concord Ave, African-American families who I had grown up with say, your Uncle Charlie, your Uncle Charlie. And of course your dad.
Yeah.
So that was a whole learning experience. And I think I like the fact that my campaign really came out of people that I grew up with and kids that I had grown up with, because there was a big gap between my dad and me.
Yeah.
And if my mother had her way, I never would have run. I can remember bringing my
Really?
first.
She knew.
Oh yeah.
She knew what it was like to
She's
be a
happy now.
political person.
I'm a lawyer. I'm collecting. You know, I'm making some money.
My son, the lawyer.
She's happy. But we had a lot of fun. We did. There's no doubt about it. It was great.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for future city councilors?
Have fun. City councilors.
Or candidates.
City
Or both.
council.
city councilors.
City councilors is.
We don't want city councilors to be having
So
fun on
after the campaigns, cleanse yourself of all this. I'm better than this candidate and better than this candidate, and what
Yeah.
makes you different. And really, you almost have to just go through a process where you say none of that matters now, and decide that as a Cambridge resident who loves the city, here are the 3 or 4 things that I think we as a group need to accomplish for the next 2 years. Because that's really your obligation as an elected official. And I think it's really hard for people to shed that, why I care more about this group of people than that. And I think, you know, it's really important. And the mayoral election doesn't help.
Or I got more votes than this person.
Yeah.
did, or-
Well, actually, that point of view, I think, applies equally well to people who win in the election and people who lose in the election.
That's true.
The thing is, I mean, and I'll say amongst the field of candidates this year, there are some people here who maybe haven't been especially involved in civic affairs around the city, but who I think will be really good additions. And so I'm saying, please, you know, there's 25 candidates, only 9 are going to get elected. So for everybody else, don't go away.
And keep going out. I mean, I feel like for me, I'm just doing a lot more of the stuff I really enjoyed. But I can remember after I was elected mayor, I had each city councilor in, and I said, what would you like to get done over the next 2 years? And Jim Browdy, who was a student of government, you know, said, here's my list, and I expect you to do it all, because you're now the mayor. Others looked at me like, is he serious? Is he really gonna? Is he really gonna help me?
Up to?
Exactly. And so you really got to get through that.
Which was the truth?
Well, I mean,
A little of both.
you know, that's why I liked for candidates. If you can get so many votes, it's great. You can establish popular support. But you know what? Not everyone's going to be able to top the ticket. So you gotta enjoy the campaign.
That's right.
You really have to enjoy the piece of going out and meeting people, and you got to be in a point of your life when you can really do that.
Yeah.
And then after you're elected, you gotta love the city so much that you put those differences behind you.
And I've always felt that once a candidate, you really are a Canterbridgian.
Well, you know, I remember probably
No matter where you came from.
Yeah, and I remember after, you know, I served with Michael Sullivan for so long, and when he left, I really missed him.
Yeah.
You know, and I missed Frank Duhigg, and I even, you know, Alice. So remember, you had some quality.
Even Alice.
Well, Alice and I ran against each other, so, you know, but I did. You know, I learned a lot, so you have to appreciate
Well,
that.
we really thank you for coming and joining us. This was a great hour, well, 2 great half hours,
Right.
really.
Good luck
Thank
to
you so
all the
much.
candidates. Have
Good
fun.
luck to- And
Get out
Cambridge
and vote.
Inside.